Yep, Kenny's it.
Kenny's it.
There's Adam.
Yeah, there is some place in there.
Bring it up.
Chrissy Brown's in.
Yeah, we're ready. Oh, no one's on.
Need PDF stuff.
Takes forever. Yeah. Just started these. What's up?
You may print off the agenda.
Don't know why I don't have it. But I don't have it. Do you? Anybody get it?
I have a copy.
Wonder why I didn't get it.
Send the PDF file we got. That's all I saw.
Yeah, this is.
I just
Yeah,
don't
that's-
have it.
There was no packet, it was just.
Oh, okay. So sorry. Gotcha. Okay.
What?
Get our EDC lady up here.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bring one more.
Go right ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, whoever you want, sir.
I did roll call.
If we're bringing other, yeah, for the non-commissioners.
Okay. Got one more comment. He's just a little late. He'll be here in just a second. He had to stop and get coffee. He'd been eating.
We can go ahead and start it. No big deal. It's not
Whatever you
gonna-
need, Kenny.
Yeah,
Just,
do you?
Hmm?
Does he need to be here for us to start?
Well, it'd be nice. but
Okay.
It should be here in just a second. I talked to him. He was here across the street. I know. And he said he was even over there with us. I said he's talking.
Yeah, what?
Coffee shop right around here somewhere.
oh, yeah, yeah, several of them around here.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be just a couple minutes before we open the meeting, waiting on one other person to get here. County Commissioners on this Monday, May 22nd, 2023 at 1:04 PM. And if we could roll call, please. You want me to do it? Since I don't know whoever.
I
it
am
is.
unsure of their names, so if you
Okay.
would like to do roll call.
I'll do roll call, starting with gentleman on the end, if you'll state your name.
Josh Mesmer.
Josh Messmer,
Kenny Hale.
Ron West.
Brian Baird.
Kevin Walls.
So that's all that's present that's up here on the bench at this point in time.
That matters at least.
The matters the least is what that is. Anyway, we're here for a discussion with Morgan County Redevelopment Commission regarding the wastewater project that's already existing in Morgan County. So I don't know who's presenting this, but whoever that is, if they would.
Yeah,
care to-
I'll get us started. So before we kind of hand it over to our technical people, I just wanted to give a background on the scenario as I understand it, because I think we've all been at different parts of this throughout the process. So the reason Morgan County got started in the area is we've had a school, Waverly School in the area that had a failing septic. We had a lot of failing septics in the area. And so, prior to being commissioner, Mr. Hale, as well as Commissioner Kyle at the time, started the process of looking for a place. Where we landed is not where we wanted to be. As you would design a sewer plant, going to the top of the hill is not usually the place where you want to put it. But we had to work through obstacles. We finally found a willing seller. And so that's where we ultimately ended up. I think there were a lot of iterations throughout. I believe Johnson County might have been at the table through some of that. Bargersville was at the table through some of that. But in the final version, Morgan County ended up building it alone and going forward. But now that we're there, we've got about 19 customers, and this is in an area that is growing. So we have capacity today. We sat down with Bargersville a few months ago just to try and find out, hey, they had signed a contract with us, and we said, hey, why haven't you guys signed up for more? And let's hash this out. And they said, well, if we could work it out, we'd be interested. But we started the process to look for our own site to build. And they said, we believe Johnson County has done the same. And so we have all, in our opinion, we're a confluence of our three communities, and we're bounded by our geographic limits, and you guys all are as well. But we all have a common interest in this area that we believe is going to expand. And so instead of us keeping our sewer plant to ourselves, we said, how is the best way that we can go about engaging you guys and Bargersville and Johnson County or in this conversation to see who might be interested, because we think it's cheaper to expand than build new for every different party to have 3 different sewer plants in the area. And so we're opening the conversation. We brought Doug from Baker Tilly, and we've also got Adam from Barnes and Thornburg who represent us. They're a lot smarter at this than we are, but we wanted to bring them with you so you guys can ask questions. You can think through. I mean, we don't expect an answer today, but we want to open this conversation. We want your team to vet what this looks like to see if it's worth moving forward with. So that's kind of our opening salvo.
What's the capacity on this plant now currently?
Today it's 60,000. So it's,
60,000.
if anybody agrees to an expansion, we know almost immediately we're gonna have to look at expanding the plant.
Do you have room to expand?
Yes, we have
Oh,
lots of acreage in the area.
Well, I haven't seen it, so.
I think we're on like 80 acres, but I think we've reserved, Chelsea, correct me, is it 10 to 15 for expansion?
Yeah, we've actually, of the 80 acres, 30 of it is in Johnson County and 50 of it is in Morgan. It's the RMR property where Wallace was for years and still are. It's a nice, quite a bit of room.
So brings up the question, what do you want to do? You want to do it? I cut to the chase. You want to do a 2-way split? You want to do a 3-way split between Bargersville, because all communities are involved in this and have a stake in this? And do you want to, is that what you're looking for here? Or I'm just asking questions. I'm just,
So I'd be open, I'd like to have Adam kind of present the options of what it could look like, as opposed to me.
we knew he didn't
telling-
come just to sit there and eat lunch with
Just
ants
so it's
today.
pretty.
Yeah, so, thank you all, and as Josh said, there's, interest from all the communities, especially from the area, so, how we sort of envision it, and all these details can be figured out, but we at least wanted to sort of present some options for you all to digest, and we can come back with the details, but, sort of your capacity needs, measuring out Morgan County's capacity needs, Bargersville's, if they want to participate, and given how much capacity that you would need, we would start out with an expansion most likely, and then that would be, I would imagine on a pro rata basis, you need, it's a 100,000 gallon expansion, you need 40,000. You're looking at 40% cost.
Yeah.
The good news is the plant already exists, so it can help capacity immediately if, once the lines are connected. We already applied in permits, everything's already sort of ready to go. I understand the project was initially built ready for expansion or to be expanded. So there are some opportunities here, hopefully that might make sense.
Would it be, I mean, I know this is early in the process. Would this just be a capacity buy-in, or would it be a retroactive own part of the plant, or it's a 3-way split? I'm just asking questions so they're out there.
Yeah, so most likely what we would recommend is basically a capacity buy where you would have a fixed cost that would be proportionate to the expansion. So if it's 40%, then you chip in for that 40%, whether upfront or over time, we can figure those details out. But then there would be a monthly charge, most likely at a wholesale rate. And then you would pass some of that cost to bill your customers for that. But then Morgan County would bill Johnson County for variable cost and There's a monthly charge or if you pay it all upfront for the capital side.
I think that's what I was asking. Would we buy into the original buy-in to the plant, or would it just be capacity that we're just being provided?
It would be on just capacity. So the best way to describe it is you would have all of that reserve. So if it's 40,000 gallons, you get those 40,000 gallons. They could not be diluted by Bargersville or Morgan County. As opposed to if you had a undivided partial interest, Morgan County could keep expanding and keep raising rates on Johnson County if you didn't. But that's not what we're talking about here. You just own that a right to 40%, and then your ability to use that as well.
We had a study done in 2018 by United Consulting, and we were interested at the time in what areas in Johnson County that could be serviced from this plant. And we identified 4 basic areas that currently on septic, and the costs associated with service in those areas was minimal, we thought at the time. United shows that initially you would have a 60,000 gallon per day capacity, and then they state here phased in capacity up to 240,000, and then eventually to a maximum of 480,000 for Morgan County, or at least the capacity. But when you combine what we were going to bring to it early on, the capacity would have been 627,800 gallons, what they estimated. So in the beginning, I was involved with conversations regarding this was before we ever broke ground on the plant, and I was dealing with Daniel Elliott at the time, and I spent about 2 years going back and forth with Daniel, and eventually with the county attorney, Dakota. I can't remember her full name. Yeah, but all along, I felt like Johnson County's position on this, which would make more sense for everybody involved, would be to share equally in the costs associated with the plant. And that would give us equal representation. We were concerned initially that we didn't want to be in a minority position where we were subject to your board's decisions, especially when it comes to expansion and needed capacity to service our areas. And as I put forth at the time, and we were working towards, and I thought an agreement wherein we would share equally in the costs of the plant. Each entity would bear the cost of extending service. In other words, if it costs us $6-10 million, whatever, to extend service into Johnson County, we would pay for that. And then the income coming off of that, the first dollars obviously would go for treatment, to pay for the treatment of the effluent. The second part would go to retire the debt we would incur. And then the third part would hopefully result in net profits, which we would share equally. And that made a lot of sense to me, and it really protected our interest. Didn't dilute Morgan County's interest in as much as they would still be an equal partner in it, and we can move forward. And we felt like at the time that we have the ability to bring a lot more to the plant than Morgan County, especially in light of, and I talked to Ryan, was a commissioner back then, and one of the things I approached him about was, we knew you had to service the school. And I said, so are you going to make it mandatory everybody in Waverly along that line hook up? No, we said, we're not going to. And I thought that was a fatal mistake, in as much as you could have all of those people connect under Barrett law, where it'd be a minimal cost to it. You could amortize it over 20, maybe 30 years, I don't know. It would obviously enhance the value of their properties, provide a needed service to them, get them off of septics, which are probably failing, a lot of them, just like we have in a couple areas in Johnson County. And I thought that was a workable position that made an awful lot of sense and would advance the capacity availability of this plant. Here's the problem with just buying capacity. We've witnessed this over the years with Greenwood in the city of Indianapolis. And that's essentially what Greenwood does. They buy capacity at a certain rate. And then at the end of that term, Indianapolis holds them ransom, runs the rate way up, want to minimize the capacity. And in the interim, then Greenwood winds up with a moratorium on construction because they have no availability. We don't want to be in that position. We expect an awful lot of growth in that particular area as a result of I-69. And then we expect a lot of customer availability due to existing areas, as I aforementioned. So for me, the only thing I'll consider, now there's 3 votes here, obviously, and I could be overvoted and have been on a number of occasions. I'll just throw that little caveat in there. But I wouldn't support anything that didn't give our county equal representation in this project. And so I think it makes an awful lot of sense what we're proposing, or at least what I'm proposing. And I think the other 2 gentlemen here have agreed to that premise in the past. Now, we're still open. But that makes an awful lot of sense in as much as it allows this plant to expand capacity with a minimal cost to them, gives them the potential net profit that would be derived off of an increased current customer base over the years. And then obviously with the growth we're going to experience would really help us in as much as being able to provide service to that growth. In the absence of that, we've looked at possibly building our own plant. And as was referenced earlier by Josh, that's probably not the best for everybody. I mean, we don't want to do that, but by the same token, we don't want to be in a minority position where we don't have some control over our destiny.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So is that what you want to do?
Yeah, I actually think so. So
Good,
we're
I
on
think
the
it makes sense.
Same page in the sense that no one wants to be Greenwood, Indianapolis, right? No one
Right.
wants you to be hostage to anybody else. And when we say, capacity sale, I don't want that to be conjure up any examples of somebody else and then how that would work versus how this. I have no idea how Greenwood and Indianapolis have their regions work. This is for the benefit of the conversation. I mean, obviously, you guys would have to agree. The county, Morgan County, everybody would have to agree on sort of the structure. But how this was at least somewhat envisioned is you have a contractual rate, so you are locked in. So we can, and that might have some escalators in it, which could be negotiated just for cost, operational costs go up, or they stay flat. But we would not. That would be all determined up front, and so you would not be subject to the whims of whatever Morgan County decided. If it was a board of 2 Johnson County and 5 Morgan County, they can always just keep raising rates in Johnson County to fund extensions over in Morgan County. So that's what we're trying to avoid and allow.
So how do you plan to avoid that? When you said we would have a contractual rate, who's going to set that rate initially?
Negotiated by the parties. So there would be 2 parts of it. One would be the capital needs, and that could just be amortized over the period. And then there would be, the variable rate depending on usage.
And the capital, assuming that our contractual rate would be paying for part of that capital rate, right?
Yeah, so if we
And who would be the owners?
Morgan County Sewer District would be the owner of just the plant, but
Yeah.
they would be, you would own whatever that capacity is. So that would be,
And see, you can't contract capacity in perpetuity, so you got to put a term on it, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened in Indianapolis, that when that term expired, they had no control over the new rate or the new capacity requirements. And they were subject to whatever Indianapolis posed on them. We don't want to be 10 years down the road and have the Department of Public Works or the sewer district or whatever from Morgan County say to us, well, your rate's going to double and we can only give you 10,000 more capacity a day or something of that nature. We don't want to be in that position. We'd like to be in a position where 10 years from now, if we need twice the capacity, we're going to put capital into that plant to make that capacity available and help you guys at the same token. Because keep in mind, what I said in the beginning, Morgan County is going to share equally in the net profit of it. So if we bring 20,000 customers, you got how many right now? 18? So anyway, see the point?
Yeah.
We're in a position to really help Morgan County on it. I got to tell you right now, and Josh alluded to it, and he hit it right on the head. Building that plant on the hill was the last thing you really, I mean, you can't do anything with gravity when you're uphill, right?
Right.
But the fact is, you're there now, and you need to make that plant at best break even, but for sure profitable. You guys aren't going to be able to do it. This thing is going to cost you money going forward unless you enter into some kind of an agreement with another entity that can provide a customer base for you. And we can do that. And we're willing to do that, but we want an equal opportunity in that.
right.
We're not interested in being subject to a board, subject to the other three commissioners with a minority position.
Right. That's why I didn't mention like an expanding of the territory district, because then you're in that minority position. So I think the length of the contract would be long enough to alleviate any of the concerns and issues. So in my mind, it'd be 25, 30, 40 years. So how this sort of would work though is when you buy 100,000 gallons of capacity right of this newly expanded plant, you would have the right to also do any further expansions. You need it. There's another expansion coming up and you need more. It's all on that pro rata basis. So you just always own that percentage of the capacity. And then it could not be diluted.
And can't that contract like have a provision that Johnson County
Yeah.
needs to expand? It will be expanded. You're just gonna have to pay for your shit.
Yeah. So then if the capacity comes up if you guys need an expansion, you need Morgan County expansion, you just split that on the pro rata basis. Or if you just need it, you can still pay for it just as if you own the whole thing. So you would be able to expand capacity when you would need it. And then under this, you would also install your own lines, right? So that's where you got the contractual rate right from Morgan County. You guys then could, you would pass those rates on to your customers with the cost, presumably what it costs to install the lines. But you would not be under the Morgan County's issue of, oh, well, we want to raise rates on our customers over here to expand lines in Morgan County. That rate wouldn't apply to Johnson County. You'd have a contractually set rate. So it would not be, you would not be influenced by the other commissioners of Morgan County, or you would not, the burden would not be shifted to you.
And their collection system costs in Morgan County, but you would just do your own.
I have trouble hearing. I can't hear what he's saying.
So is this better now?
Yes.
Yeah, well, this gentleman there, I couldn't hear. Come on up
Sorry.
close.
Yeah, the collection system costs, where Morgan County would have their own collection system costs, Johnson County would have their collection system costs. You wouldn't have to share in Morgan County's costs. You would just have your own collection system costs and your share of the treatment costs. So, you would benefit by having control over what your costs other than treatment are, which can be significant. especially if you're gonna have a big system.
I want to interject real fast because I'll just be forthright. I'm a terrible poker player, so I'll just share what I want to share. But so Commissioner, I want to make something work. So I was pushing these guys. Why would we not give up ownership? They have some reasons for that, but Adam convinced me that you all get more protections under the scenario that they're proposing than if we had a joint ownership. Because he said, you don't just get to make up whatever ownership you guys want anyways. State code's going to dictate what that ownership looks like. So I was not in favor of this approach to begin with, but the more we talked through it, the more he helped me realize that we can both protect ourselves. And you mentioned the ability to make it profitable. Well, you would pass on to your ratepayers, through whatever wholesale rate that you want. But you can set out your system to include whatever extra charges you need. And so your system could be profitable. One of the things Adam mentioned to me was, this agreement, maybe it's for 15 years, maybe it's for 20. But at the end, our incentives may diverge from one another, or based on where your growth happens, you may say, now I do need a plant 15, 20 years down the road. I'm going to build it over here because this is where our growth is dictated. And you've got all those lines. In theory, have been able to put away money that the revenue you guys have been making to pour into your own system, and you still have all the distribution lines to take it back. So I'll ask Adam to elaborate on some more of your questions, but he's convinced me that you actually have more protections under a contractual basis than you do otherwise.
Yeah, so
It could be a matter of semantics here.
Yeah.
Protection, how do you define protection?
So the ability to dilute or shift burdens of costs to one party versus the other. So we could, I think the best way for me to explain the contractual idea would be, you would basically, you have the idea that you would own whatever that capacity is on the other side and on the lines. So it would just be like if there was a 300,000 gallon plant, you owned a capacity of 100,000, basically that you had 100,000 gallon capacity of treatment plant of your own. But we would just be able to dilute those costs of the whole 300,000. So we could, when you wanted to expand capacity, you could pay for that and it would be expanded. If we both wanted to expand at the same time, right? We both needed half the capacity, we share those costs 50-50.
So real quick.
Yeah.
Before you get too far along here. So let's assume that we want to expand capacity.
Yep.
And we need to add 200,000 gallon per day capacity to your plant, right?
Yep.
And you say we pay for that.
Right.
And who owns that?
You own the capacity of the 200,000, so we could.
But
not-
we don't own any of the capital assets, and that's where I keep going back to. We're just buying capacity. If we just want capacity, then why not just build our own plant and we own the capital and everything and we get the capacity? There's no advantage that I see in your proposal. Again, all you're offering us is capacity based on a term and a cost, which would then be negotiated at the end of that term. And all of the capital, we got no interest in capital at all. You guys got it all.
I think maybe here's where the semantics will help. So we can't use that 200,000.
Doesn't make any difference whether you could use it or not. What I'm saying is if we expand your plant to have that capacity available, you still own the capital. And somewhere down the road, we've got to renegotiate the cost and/or, well, in this case, you're saying not the capacity, but the cost of treatment. Right? You can't guarantee us treatment costs for 30, 40, 50 years at today's price. You know that. It's got to be reconsidered occasionally over a period of time as costs escalate.
Sorry, the
And
operating
so
costs.
we're again, at the end of that term, we're back into a negotiation thing with you. Where under my proposal, if we share equally, doesn't make any difference what the cost of treatment is. We're both sharing in that. The only difference here is we're bringing a ton of net profit to the operation with the increased customer base that you're not gonna get under your continued, if you continue into the scenario you're at.
So under mine, you would still own that capacity right. So when, just like when you issue bonds now, you pay off those bonds over time and you own the building at the end. Right, so you would still own that. We don't keep charging you once that is been completed.
Well, I think the disconnect potentially is really just, your plan makes sense, at least to me, with the proposed contract for that duration of time. But then at the conclusion of that contract, we have to negotiate again, and then we'd be subject to Morgan County's rate decisions and those costs at that point in time, correct? Is that not the hangup is when we come back to the table to renegotiate, we poured capital in, we poured money in to get this thing going, but then when we go to renegotiate, we're kind of over a barrel a little bit here, is I think the hangup.
Yeah.
Is that right? So how do we bridge that gap, I guess, is really the issue.
So really at that point, you're talking about the monthly variable charge of the cost of operating. That gets the cost of the treatment of things that's sent.
So Adam, is that a,
I mean, the cost of treatment can be laid out pretty specifically on how that will be calculated in the future. And that, I don't know if you can allow for an automatic extension of that capacity, just subject to, the future rates and charges that are gonna.
What's your name again?
Doug Baldessari, Baker Tilly.
What's last name?
Baldessari.
Okay.
See, here's the other, I started to say fallacy, and that's not the correct word with your proposal, but the problem with it is, we're talking about cost of treatment, okay? Well, cost of treatment is basically how much it costs to operate that plant for a period of time, and then divided by the gallonage that you treat, right? That's a simple way you get it. But you've got 18 or 19 customers. We got 20,000 customers. Yet we're paying for the full treatment. In other words, all of those people that are treating your 18 or 19 customers. Well, that's not quite right. You see, the disparity in customer base is really the crux of this, I think, probably more so than the capital interest that we keep talking about. But the treatment is easily calculated. Costs you this much to operate for a given period of time, divided by the gallonage, and that's what it is per gallon.
No matter whose customer.
Exactly.
That's correct.
So, again, it doesn't make sense for us to pay the burden of that treatment cost with our customer base to allow Morgan County to have 18 or 19 customers on their side. So again, going back, if we go back to equal ownership, then the cost of treatment, we're sharing it equally, right? And like I said before, the monies that come in on our side goes to treat. That's the first part of it. And so now we are absorbing that, but we're doing an awful usage. And then we know as capacity needs to come on, that there's going to be a sharing in that. You got to share in that if we're going to share equally. Just like I'm saying, if you guys needed to add capacity, if we're equal owners, we would share in that, the capital costs. Just like I'm saying right now, the plant, what did it cost you to build that plant? 10 million, 5 million?
7 or 8 million, but
Huh?
$7 or $8 million.
7 or 8, let's just say 8. We come on board, you got $4 million right then, because we're sharing equally,
That was the
50%.
collection and the
Huh?
treatment plant. That was a collection and the treatment plant together.
Well, whatever, but we're sharing that equally. So you got that kind of capital back right in the beginning. And again, I go back to extension of service. We pay for that. And we bear the cost. We recover the money through the customer base. So that's the second part of the money. It just makes an awful lot of sense, and nobody is in a minority position then.
So how, I don't see how that's different from the variable treatment.
Yeah, because I mean, you have really two categories of operating costs. You have the collection system costs, which yours is gonna be a lot bigger, it sounds like, with your 20,000 customers. And then you have the treatment cost, which is the same for everybody. So, I guess I'm a little confused on, I guess if I'm sitting in your seat, why do I want to have equal ownership? And I guess it's good for all the communities, but if you're creating most of the profit, why are you giving that back to Morgan County if you're equal owners?
Because we're good neighbors. Yeah, quite honestly. That was one of our thoughts in the beginning when we first started talking to Morgan County and especially with Kenny. We're in a position where we think we can help you guys and we want to help. And by the same token, I mean, it's not just all one-sided. We're trying to help ourselves too with the growth we anticipate. And so we're willing to help Morgan County. We think, quite honestly, we think you guys are in a bad position on that plant right now, given your ability to generate a customer base. Now, you might enter into an agreement with Bargersville, I don't know. And I even went so far and I talked to Kenny about this. If Bargersville wants to be a player in this somehow or another, or if we have contention there, we could bring on some of their customer base and pay them per gallon profit. In other words, they don't do anything but allow us to treat their customer base in that area. You know, Mike Duke's got that 200 and some acre whatever going in. Let's just assume that we could treat all of that in this plant and we would just simply pay Bargersville so much a month based on the gallonage. They don't have anything invested. They make a little money on it and we're able to get that customer base.
I think another thing to consider is we keep talking profit and stuff, but if you're growing that fast and building lines, it's gonna cost a lot of money to keep that growth up.
Yeah, I'm not talking about profits tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna.
Yeah, we know it's a long range project, but it gives the county what we've always said we needed as a public utility.
You could still have that, but it doesn't still have contractual relationship on the treatment plant, so.
Yeah, we could, but we don't like that arrangement.
So I have just a couple of questions. So, I mean, to me, the option of a deal with Morgan County or, you know, constructing your own, right? That's the sort of the options that I see for Johnson County. So, if there was this sort of 50-50 ownership interest, what happens when, you know, Morgan County wants to expand for its, you know, its lines in Morgan County? I mean, those rates would be applied to everybody equally?
Are you talking about extending service?
Yeah.
They pay for that. That's what I said. We pay for an extension, so they pay for an extension of service. We don't pay for that in Morgan County.
Okay, so we're on the same page for lines and extensions of service.
If you're extending that service, yes, you would be responsible as your individual party.
Okay, so how do we do rates, right? So you'll charge your customers, and we'll charge our customers? Okay. just making sure I understand.
Well, rates would, I would assume, would pretty much be predicated on going back to the treatment cost.
Yeah.
And then the capital costs that you're trying to absorb.
Right.
And then whatever profit, that profit you think you need to apply for future growth or whatever, and all of the things that would go into that computation. So capital reserve for expansion and all of that, but somehow you come up with now you could do a variable rate, I guess, if you wanted to, where Morgan County would charge their customers more based on their capital cost recovery. That makes sense and would probably be what would happen. Just like we might have a different rate on ours, because if we're making a $10 million expansion on extending service, but yet we're bringing on 20,000 customers, obviously we're going to be able to reduce our per customer capital costs, where if you're running 10 million and you're only servicing 500 people, it's different. So you would conceivably have a different rate based on your capital investment.
Yeah, so you'd have to have.
Yeah,
separate
but the
rates.
treatment costs would be, but it would always be the same, it would be equal in both. In other words, if it costs us a penny a gallon, it costs you a penny a gallon.
But the collection system costs, I mean, over time, those become just as much or more as the treatment costs. Especially as you get a larger system that gets older.
Yeah, I haven't done the math on that yet because I don't know what the rate would be. But if you got what are you charging currently? What are you charging down there in Waverly now?
70 bucks a month.
Huh?
70 a month.
70? Yeah. I don't know, we could use 70 and do some calculation, I guess, but it's a long-term investment. There's no question about that. And you have to amortize over that extended period of time.
Right, so we would have each county, responsible for their own lines, paying for their own lines, repairing their own lines. And each county would then share in the treatment of that waste.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and especially in our case, well, you would have the same thing, but we would have a number of lift stations. I mean,
Yeah.
most of it's going to be pressurized system. So we've got a number of lift stations. You're always going to have a certain amount of maintenance costs associated with it. We would bear those costs and it would be incorporated into our rate as we needed to make those adjustments, just like the capital. It's basically would be a capital cost. And it'll be reflected in the rate. Same thing with you guys. Most of yours are gonna have to be lift stations because of your altitude on your plan. But, I hate to oversimplify it,
Yeah, I'm just.
but it really could be a fairly simple
I just wanna make sure I
arrangement.
understand this. How-
Here's the only
how-
complication in my proposal. Now we both share equally, right? It's kind of like having a two-member board. Sometimes it might be hard to get stuff passed. So probably what we would have to do there is get some minds together like you guys, Kenny and Josh down here, and determine how this board, we would have a board and how it would be composed so that there's some neutrality in there. We would each have our own sides or perspective, but there'd have to be some neutrality there and obviously get it into an odd number so you could have a consensus. But beyond that, I'd love to do business with you, Ken.
One thing we haven't brought up is Bargersville and this whole thing.
Who?
Bargersville.
I told you about Bargersville. I already said that. We would simply say to them, we'll pay you so much for a customer base instead of them spending $5 million to run a line out there. Save your 5 million, let us have that, and we'll pay you so much a gallon on the treatment that whatever it comes through, and you don't have any costs at all, just gravy.
Sounds simple, doesn't it?
And if they, well, it is.
I don't know. You might want to check with them.
Well, it is. In light of,
Well, the only thing I don't want to see here, sir, is you set something up like this and Bargersville says, screw you. We're going to run the $5 million line. Then what are we going to do?
let them run it. We don't need their
There is
customer
a
base.
huge, oh, we don't, okay,
No,
okay,
hell no, we don't need it.
okay. I'm just making sure you said that. We don't need it. Okay.
Morgan-
So
Morgan County built that plant without Bargersville.
And it serves 19 people.
I know, but it's gonna be bigger when we get involved.
Brian, you look like you have something to say.
Sometimes you don't know what to say. I guess I try to look at things in, I guess, in a common sense and regional way. And I agree with a lot of what Commissioner West is saying. As this Board of Johnson County Commissioners, we have reached out to cities and towns and we've done our best to regionalize Johnson County. And I assume in that same spirit, if we're looking to regionalize other counties, that they have to have say in the game, they have to have skin in the game. And I think the only way to do that is through a partnership between counties. And in that same way, you know, with much responsibility comes much of what you need to do to make that work in other areas too. And I don't think we can do that by just buying capacity. I would much rather see us build our own to where we can tell the taxpayers in Johnson County that we are the ones that have control and we are the ones that will control this because they elected us to do that. I think if we do anything less than that, partnering with Morgan County as a partnership between two counties or two counties in a town, whatever that is, it just makes sense for the residents of Johnson County that we have that ability. That's what we were elected for, is to protect our taxpayers. So I look at it that way, and I don't think we give them that protection. Yeah, we can give them some protection for a period of so many years, whatever that contract is. But once you get past that, we have no protection for our taxpayers at that point in time, because those charges can go anywhere they need to go, because that way, by that time, we own all the lines that we put in, I assume.
Yep.
So at that point in time, you know, here's where we're at that point in time. We're at a decision: do we build our own plant and just bring those lines to our plant, or do we use that to negotiate and kind of put Morgan County over barrel in what we do at that point in time? I don't think any of those results are the end result we want. I don't think either county wants to put another one over a barrel, I would hope. So,
Absolutely.
and I think the only way you can do that is you do it through a partnership. And I'd like to own my own, because I think that, you know, I'm a business owner. I hate splitting things three ways, fight with these other two for where you want to go. But that's the way this system works, and it seems to work well when we can negotiate like that. And I think it would work well if it was done as a partnership with Morgan County in that same way. We like guidance, and I would hope Morgan County likes guidance, and I think we can equally provide that under that basis. And Kevin kind of was writing down the way that you put the three together and you bring them down into one, and it just seems to make us more regional and work together better, I think, at that point in time. If we want capacity, heck, we can get capacity from Greenwood.
I appreciate the comments. I agree. No one wants to go into this thinking they're going to hold anybody else over another barrel.
But this is this group of commissioners, and that's the current group of commissioners. 10 years down the road, you're gonna see all new faces.
Absolutely, we cannot.
Can't predict the future.
No one would go back 15 years ago and tell you the world would be like it is today. So,
Amen to that comment.
Well,
we can
it's
never make
biblical.
promises on how things will be in 25 or 30 years. So I think as part of what I understand your concerns, right? So you do all that, and there's an issue with the future commissioners of the two counties on agreeing something. I absolutely understand that concern. As you pointed out, it also works the other way around, in that you own all those lines. You can, in year 20, build your own plant and say, well, now all of our customers go here. We have either built or expanded or otherwise operating under a system that loses half its customers.
And you have that many customers, you can build a plant. Another thing to consider too is the debt that Morgan County has that have to be shared too, in a situation.
But that's the right way to do it.
I'm willing to do that.
You know, that, I mean, in my eyes,
I mean,
that's the right
we'll
way.
just
to
go
do it.
back and pick up the investment that Morgan County's put into it. And if there's 2 entities, 3 entities, we split that equally. That'd be a partnership.
It
You
helps
just buy
you.
in the capital
Yeah.
already invested is what we're doing.
You guys become more
Right.
whole that way, and what you've done to this point, and then we can expand together going forward in years from now, instead of, I guess, kind of, to me, it's like putting the cart before the horse. But if we're going to end up building our own plant anyway, why don't we just own part of what you guys got and make it work that way? I mean, that's just kind of the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, so, and we've thought a lot about this, so, and again, nobody has to decide anything today, so I hope we would all marinate on
Oh,
what
absolutely.
everybody.
Oh, yeah.
everybody shared.
Absolutely.
So some of the issues to consider later is, 50-50 now, but that plant expansion is needed later that will benefit one county or the other. So, who pays for that expansion? If it's always,
It's always 50-50 on, again, I go back It's gotta be 50-50 on capital expenditures because you're sharing, each entity is sharing in the net profit off of the customer base. So you're gonna get your recovery costs back through that increased customer base or capacity usage. So let me just conclude this with this thought. Years ago, we used to do, and when I was buying and selling and trading, give or take. Either tell me how much you'll give for this, or how much you'll take for that, right? And so if I said to you under a give and take, we'll buy your plant. We'll give you the gallonage guarantee that you were offering us. Would you accept that? We just buy your plant and we'll give you a guaranteed gallonage for a period of time. Would you take that?
But this is called a buy-sell agreement.
Yeah.
I've been in several of them. Yeah,
We call it give or take.
yeah. Buy-sell.
That sounds pretty, now I'm not looking, listen, Adam, I'm not looking for an answer now. I'm just posing that for something for you to think about.
Yeah, no, I completely understand.
Yeah.
One thing, just to finish it out on the expectations though, right? If there were 50-50 on the expansions, you would lose a lot of the right to be able to charge your customers a different rate from the others.
Why?
Why? Because if the capital costs are 50-50 and and Morgan County is charging their rate based upon their current usage, now all of a sudden they need to add capacity for something they're not going to use, they got to pay for, they have to up the rates on their customers. And the same thing with.
Not necessarily, because they're gonna gain the net profit off of the increased usage. So you got a net profit incentive to offset your capital cost.
Probably you gotta have that money up front to build the expansion.
Yeah,
So
well, that's what they call financing.
right, and that's. You gotta have the rates to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so they
I
would have to.
understand.
increase rates.
So within a
Same
single
with the other way around.
district, can there be multiple rates? Can we have a different rate structure if we own it together?
Mhm.
Yeah, you can have a different
Your
rate
customer
structure.
service base is gonna determine that anyway.
The treatment cost is the same for both. That's one base of your rate. Your capital recovery sets the second part of your rate. And that could be higher or lower than ours, who knows? And then, of course, then the third would be what we determined the net profitability is gonna be, and that's a constant percentage for both. And the difference is you would get that net profit off of whatever increased customer base we bring in. And that gives you your capital
And vice
cost
versa.
recovery, just like we do. We're getting our capital cost recovery over the customer base. You would do likewise on expanding the plant. Now,
Yeah.
running service at your cost.
Right.
Part of the options are, or another option is to expand the territory of the existing district. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, this isn't a huge deal. We got to get IDEM approval. You got to get some other processes approved. Part of the problem will be, you always have to have an odd number. And then those board seats will be set by statute. So there'll be somebody with 5 and somebody with 4, or higher or lower. And that will be over all of the district. So then they will be able to say, they'll basically be able to do whatever they kind of want at that point in charging rates or raising rates or.
I go back to the regionalization. I know Commissioner West does not like it. Cartersville, Johnson County, and Morgan County, 3 and 3 on the board. Simple, easy. We're simplifying it.
If they're on there, yeah.
You
If they're
put,
part of it.
if you're part of it, you got 3 and 3. It's a regionalization. IDEM's gonna look at it favorably. The state's gonna look at it favorably. Any bonding company's gonna look at it favorably. It's a win-win-win regionalization wise. And that's what the state pushes
And in
constantly.
that diversity, there's gonna be times that one of those members will agree with another member or another entity member appointment at that time, and you're gonna go that direction anyway. And we go through that here all the time. You win some, you lose some. When you lose, you walk away, you shake hands, and you go to lunch together, hands. And it's done for the day, right, Ron?
That's right.
That's just the way we,
Retape your ankles and go back to the next round.
we've always just made it work that way because we think in that regional type manner. This current board does.
Would state statute prevent us from doing this kind of board makeup?
Well, the board seats and how they're put together are gonna be determined by statute. So, you'd have to either adjust the customers or you'd have to, it's all gonna come back to the formula in the statute. So it won't be by negotiation. I mean, I see all the pros and cons that we're all, invariably talking about here. So here, there's more of we're talking about is more of a true regionalization of the area that will be,
Put a district board appropriately set with boundaries.
versus each side retaining a little bit of autonomy on whether they want to expand or not, or
Size of the district will decide the plant size. Got it. It all works into a formula.
So let me ask this, and keeping with Commissioner Walls's question, let's say we had a joint district and we can't make it 3, 3, and 3. Could we by resolution weight the membership so that in the end you had the same voting power as 3, 3, and 3?
I mean,
That's getting tricky.
it's going to be hard in that you're gonna have
Three boards is gonna have to
some of the
agree
jurisdiction
on a resolution.
I'll proxy vote for you, Kenny. How's that?
No, I feel like I'm at home when I listen to the three of you banter, just like my commissioners.
That's what makes the world go around.
That's what makes this position unique. Everybody has their own opinion and their own thoughts, but it usually works out when you have the right people working together. It usually works out to where it comes out for the best. And as long as we're always thinking of what's best for the taxpayers in our counties, I think we're all going to be on the same page. Because if they lose, we lose. And I'm not talking about votes. Couldn't care less. I just don't want to be considered a loss for Johnson County.
Yeah.
So I think we have to make all our decisions based on that. And I think coming out in the end, I think the right decision will be made. And I think it will work out fine. But the board composition is rather important. So I think we need to know how that would work out. And I think you're meeting with Bargersville also on this
Yes.
same thing. So, I mean, we'll know a little bit more what you come out from with that.
Right.
I assume we'll hear about that. So we know what's going on there and then I
Go
think
from
just
there.
kind of move forward from there and decide what's best. And we have to decide what's best for Morgan County, for Johnson County, and for Bargersville, all the same. We can't just take one stand on this. We've got to be thinking of what works for you just as well. We've got to be thinking about what works for us because I'm with Commissioner West. I don't want to take advantage of anybody or do anything that I have to protect down the road. So I think we'll get there.
And we're all on the same team. I mean, that's why we gotta dig and care about what each other gotta worry about. So I mean, to me, I've always been able to work with Johnson County commissioners, trust them, don't have a better problem with that.
And it works the same way back.
I know it does.
We've got a really good relationship
Yeah.
right now.
Here's one added thought to help you guys in your decision making. You got
It's our
60,
decision.
you got 60,000, you got 60,000
Selling
gallons
now.
per day capacity right now.
Right.
How much of that are you using?
I don't know, Kelly, how much are we?
Bargersville has, out of that 60,000, they have 12,500 reserved out of that 60,000 already with a contract agreement already with Bargersville. That's what we finalized at the end of last year. And then out of that, it fluctuates month to month, just several thousand. With summer coming and school being out, it drops drastically. Because of the school
So
having the-
you don't know what your daily usage is?
It's around 4,000 to 5,000.
Okay, let's just say 5, we'll give you a benefit, we're gonna say 5,000. So you have a plant that can service 60,000 gallons a day right now at virtually the same cost as it's costing you for 5, other than additional chemicals or whatever you might need. But beyond that, then that's a minimal cost. So if we brought, as an example, 55,000 customers, do you know what your portion of that treatment would be? It would go down practically nil compared to what you're paying today. Keep that in mind. You got 60,000 capacity, it costs you the same, whether you're treating 5 or 50, other than, like I said, the chemicals maybe. Whatever customer base we bring is gonna help Morgan County in that cost alone. Besides the profit incentive or the net incentive. So think about that when you're doing your calculations.
And I think I heard that Burgersville's got a 12,500 gallon. And they're paying for that capacity, but you're only using 5,000 of that capacity. So they're actually paying for stuff they're not using at this point. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, they're amortizing their purchase of, the capacity,
Right.
but then they've got a wholesale agreement for their actual usage.
So are they paying right now, even though they're not utilizing any? of it?
Only the customers that are hooked on right now.
Which are the 2 gas stations currently, and their wholesale rate is $4.06 per 1,000 gallons,
$4.06?
per 1,000 gallons,
That's Burgersville?
Bartersville.
Yes.
But, so they're only paying for whatever needs to be treated. They're not
Well,
paying a
plus
flat
their
rate for the
charges.
12.5.
Plus they're paying 5,700 a month for their reserve capacity.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. They're already paying for capacity they're not using.
Yes.
Correct.
And that's,
just reserved.
That's how everybody, nobody operates.
no, understood, but I was just seeing that 5,000 being used, but only they're paying for 12.5 basically and using 5,000, or somebody's using 5,000.
I think that group's 6 months old, so I think they are in the process of looking more on.
He's got his calculator
I
out.
think
This is dangerous.
I would leave it with, this is all a bit, the blanket doesn't cover the entire bit, right? Like you
Right.
start pulling the corner one way, you start exposed together. So everything's got its pros and cons. So I think definitely Warren County will have to think about and consider on, various options that you guys are willing to consider. Would be extremely helpful.
Not, I think I've learned some things today, so I mean, I like learning. I don't know.
We concur 100% that the more customers, the better. Spread those costs out.
It's gonna help us all.
Regionalization's the key. You get incentives from the state, so finding a way to work together.
Thanks, guys.
I'm good.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Kenny and I go way back. We went to our
Way back.
first I-69 meeting, and I said 94. Kenny said it was 95, but he was director of park department in Martinsville. We met in Martinsville High
Oh,
School.
yeah, years ago.
We didn't even remember that.
Oh, I bet he
It's in the
remembers.
county parks.
County parks. Yeah, I'm
County
sorry.
parks. You're
County
right.
parks.
Thank you very much. I need a motion to adjourn.
Josh, nice meeting you.
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much.
The restaurant.
Yeah.
When I got over at